This is 1 in 44, a presentation of Anderson Center for Autism. 1 in 44 is a weekly show devoted to autism spectrum disorder.
Welcome to 1 in 44, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, Chief Development Officer at Anderson Center for Autism. And I am here today with Coach Pasquale Pulela. Coach Pasquale is a life coach at Special Friend Coaching. And we're just thrilled to have you on the show today, Coach. We want to hear all about you, your background, and the really unique and I think important services and supports that you offer through Special Friend Coaching. So, Coach Pasquale, nice to meet you. Thanks for being on the show.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. If you could just start with a little background about who you are.
Okay. So my name is Pasquale. I am a person who was raised through the public schools special education system. I was diagnosed with at the time, they called it ADD, attention deficit disorder. Now it's considered part of ADHD. So it's ADHD minus the hyperactivity. And, being in the special needs community for my whole life, I've always sort of had a bit of a connection to just neurodiversity in general. And I love that word, by the way. So I encourage its usage. Okay. Basically, this whole thing started a couple years ago. I was going through a bit of unemployment, and somebody who knew me through high school, recommended this job that he was working at, which is, working as a caretaker for what at the time they were called Hand in Hand. Now they're called Braverhood. So I started working and still part-time working for Hand in Hand as a special needs caretaker. And, this is about a couple years of doing that. And, but after I would say like half a year of doing it, I really got into this idea of, helping special needs people and, neurodiverse people in general. Cause I found the work fulfilling. It's just, I wanted to see what would be the next step from caretaking. Cause, while it's a very fulfilling job, it's not really a career, So I've been looking around for a little bit at different things, was interested, looking into, therapies and different sorts of things, and came across life coaching and specifically oriented towards special needs people. So I thought, that sounds like something I might want to do. So I got a certification after a couple months through the Integrated Wellness Academy. I'm a certified life coach. That's not an ICF credential, which is the International Coaching Federation. It's outside of the federation, but it's it's still a very, in my opinion, very good and life coaching sort of credential. So, but also I decided because I learned also about while I was learning about life coaching, I learned about the Peers program, which is a program developed by the psychology department at UCLA. And it's basically just a collection of literature, that's not too overly academic. It's meant for everyday readers, because it's meant to put in the hands of parents, caretakers, coaches, whatever, to improve the social lives of people with autism and ADHD, Tourette's, whatever kind of neurodiversity you might come across. It stands for Program for the Education and Enrichment of Relational Skills.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
You like neurodivergent? I like peers. That's good. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you at that point get involved with Special Friend Coaching? Or did you create that program or just?
Yeah. So I set up the company, it's a legal LLC. It's,
Great.
But right now it's kind of in its infancy. So I'm still kind of in the phase where I'm looking for clients. So currently, since, I'm at the beginning, I'm offering, free services for the first few people that are coming in. To sort of I guess, get the ball rolling on this whole thing.
I mean, you got to start somewhere. So let's start by helping you out a little bit and making sure people know where to find you. So you should check out specialfriendcoach.com. That's your website. I went on there this morning. I found it very informational. There's a little bit of background about you, but also quite a number of different options. So I liked what I liked about it was that it seems like you're flexible. There's some group options. There's some kind of meditation focused and maybe mindfulness types of things, but then also some individual opportunities. And it also sounded to me like you do a free intake session to help. And then somebody who's just saying, I don't know exactly what I'm looking for. Or, because taking a step like this for the first time can be daunting, right? It can be a little bit scary. You're not sure. And maybe it's just a time to get to know you and figure out what might be right for that person. So I found your website very welcoming. Again, it's specialfriendcoach.com. And you also said people can email you directly, right? With questions?
Yeah. My email is Coach Pasquale, Pasquale @proton.me.
That's great. So 2 ways to reach you. So I just want to make sure we're going to shout that out a couple times during the show, just to make sure people know where to find more information about you and what you're doing. So I want to take you back. I always love it when people come on the show and are willing to tell a little bit about their backgrounds and kind of how you ended up where you are today. And you were really open about a few things from your childhood, as well as kind of what got you involved in becoming a caretaker in the world of supporting people with special needs. I guess as you were growing up, and maybe also in your work as a caretaker, did you get the sense that there's a lot of focus on, maybe academic success or moving, a child, maybe yourself, through the school system, and even as a caretaker for maybe children or adults with special needs themselves, kind of reaching those independence goals and learning certain skills at the potential sort of detriment or maybe less of a focus on making friends and having relationships in one's life? Because to me, that's always something that can, you can sort of easily take that for granted unless it's sort of front of mind and you're thinking about it a lot. But then whenever a light is shown on, really shown on the importance of relationships, it turns out from everything I read and my own experience, those relationships are what really helps you have a quality of life. And, and is incredibly important, if not maybe one of the most important things about, being a human person in this world. So I'm just curious if there was a story, an experience that either you had or that you saw that made you think, this is a gap area. This is something that that there needs to be more people really focused in on. Maybe you could share something like that.
Yeah, I mean, so through my experience in the special education program as a student in the program, I don't know if it's still like this today, but I'm in that era where I was of the post No Child Left Behind policy.
Yep.
So for your listeners who some might be younger and might not remember this, there was a president called George W. Bush before Obama. He set up this policy that kind of sort of created the special education system as we know it today. And my experience of it is very it kind of divided people, I think, a little bit into categories of, special ed and non-special ed, because I felt that, especially in middle school, the social aspect of being a neurodiverse person was made very difficult for me, because once you're in the special ed system at that age and that time of your life, kids can be mean and, they label you and they call you names. And that sort of, to me, it made it harder, the social part of my life. And I remember it took because not everybody in the special ed program of my school was necessarily, how should we say, lacking of friends. There were those in there that were, more charismatic than I was. Some of them were doing kind of well. And then there were those that were worse off than, they were either isolated by their peers or they were self-isolating, I don't think the school system really did a very good job of handling those more social needs. There was a huge focus, like you said, on the academic and trying to fit everybody into this certain score on these academic criteria, like math and science and so forth. And, I think that too, even in the academic field, it was very limiting because, people learn differently. I wasn't like, I consider myself to be, kind of a smart person. And, I didn't feel that the school system necessarily treated me that way. I felt that they just didn't quite get how I learned. Like at that time, the History Channel was a very good way to learn things. Discovery Channel, the Science Channel, History Channel.
Yeah.
I loved watching those things. And, I just soaked up that information like a sponge. Mm-hmm. But when it came to the classroom setting, it was a little different. So I think that's why the word neurodiversity is so important. It's because, we all have different brains and we should kind of have a society where we treat it that way.
Sure. I think my timer just went off, but also that's a really good place to take a quick break. I think you just shared some really personal stuff, which I appreciate, but I also would tell you that I think it's probably going to resonate with a lot of our listeners, either for themselves or certainly for those who are parents or other caregivers who are raising children in an environment where I hear all the time from parents, the incredibly overwhelming desire to just have people around them, whether they're school personnel or people in their community or people in a doctor's office or dentist's office, just to sort of have that openness to, I may not know everything that's going on here with this individual person. And that's usually the first step towards a different sort of type of thinking and reacting and responding to somebody. So I appreciate you sharing that. We're going to take a short break and then we'll come back and we'll get into, your approach to life coaching, which I'm really excited to hear about. This is 1 in 44, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and we'll be right back.
Alone, our reach is limited. No matter how great our intentions, on our own, we can only stretch so far. But at Rotary, we believe the right group of people working together can make our communities, our world, a better place. Rotary is a worldwide network of community volunteers dedicated to helping people in need. Learn more at Rotary.org. Rotary, humanity in motion.
And now, 1 in 44 continues on 100.7 WHUD. This is a weekly community affairs program presented by the Anderson Center for Autism.
Welcome back to 1 in 44, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and I'm talking today with life coach Pasquale Pulela. And Coach Pasquale you've really shared quite a bit about your motivation, I think, to do what you do, and provided us some nice context in terms of your experience going through the special education system when you were in school. And, middle school, I think maybe as long as middle school has existed, honestly, it just seems like it's a tough time. But it's also a time when I think for a lot of people, it's when it always seems to me like that's when sort of your vulnerabilities are just so exposed, like on a daily basis. It's like there's all this input coming at you, often pointing out the things that you feel the least confident about for whatever reason. I think it's developmental, it's the age, it's the way our brains and our bodies are developing all at the same time, but kind of all over the place. And so I really do appreciate you sharing that because like I said before the break, I think that experience you had while you probably felt quite maybe alone at the time, I think it's something that a lot of our listeners will be able to relate to and appreciate you putting that out there. So moving forward, though, now you are a young adult. You have become a caretaker in the world of special needs for others, which gives, I think, a lot of people a new perspective when you're able to use some of your own personal experience and help others. But you're also a life coach. So I'd love for you to just take the second half of the show and talk to us about what life coaching is, and what people might expect if they start to work with you as a client through special needs coaching or special friend coaching. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, first, I'd like to throw a little disclaimer, because sometimes when I explain life coaching, I get this, oh, so it's therapy. I just want to say it's not therapy.
Okay.
I do not have a degree in any kind of therapy practice. I'm not a medical practitioner of any kind, so I can't offer medical advice.
Appreciate that.
Or treat anxieties or anything like that. But essentially, life coaching is, it's basically a thing where, you would sort of coach someone in different aspects of their life in how to reach a specific goal in kind of a sort of vague, sort of abstract sense, because it's not just for special needs people. It's much broader than that. I'm just sort of kind of narrowly focused on neurodiversity.
Okay.
But essentially, the practice would go more or less like this, right? You sit down with a life coach, you go through what is the pain points in your life that are holding you back, say not enough friends, relationship issues, career stuff, I want to lose weight, whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you would go, by talking with your life coach and talking about your life and your feelings and this and that, you would essentially be mapping out a roadmap from where you are to where you want to be, right? And looking at all of the roadblocks getting in the way. And so the whole approach is to just, figure out how to align your life emotionally, mentally, spiritually, in order to get to where you want to be. And for me specifically, the way my approach is I am oriented towards improving the social lives of neurodiverse people, right? And autistic people as well, ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
So basically the way I would do this is I'm taking the information I learned at the Integrated Wellness Academy and integrating that with the Peers program and sort of blending those two together as like kind of a weekly regimen of like, here are your daily goals. Here are your social goals. Here's the sort of weekly quote unquote homework assignment, which would be like, like, for example, if you were to look at the Peers books, one assignment they recommend would be like, perhaps, making a joke with somebody or inviting someone to your house or something social to sort of build those social skills.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the whole objective.
So that's interesting. I like that. I mean, I like the breakdown of you call it a homework assignment, which makes sense to me. But something, so it's sort of like it sounds to me almost like an extra push to maybe take a risk right at that moment that a person might be saying, I want to do this, but I kind of need somebody, not maybe physically next to me, but like right there, kind of on my side saying, you can do this. Social anxiety is pervasive, I think. Then on top of it, you go through years of a pandemic where people really don't interact with each other hardly at all. And trying to kind of come back and start doing that again. There's so many obstacles. And I think that, that social anxiety is definitely a real thing, whatever you call it and however you address it. But that's what when you were talking, that's kind of the image that came to my mind, was that almost like a little friend on your shoulder or a little coach on your shoulder there with you when you start to self-doubt, right? So many of us, it's like even going on a date or something. I mean, it's just sort of like you get so close. And then many times, I think at the last minute, it's so tempting to just say, I'm not going to do this. It's too scary. What if it doesn't go well? What if the person doesn't show up? What if they don't laugh at my joke? So do you find yourself spending some time with, or do you think if somebody presented that to you, spend some time talking about or helping that person, like look at really baby steps in terms of maybe not jumping to the what happens after, but just feeling good about the attempt being made. Is that part of your approach, kind of breaking things down on that level?
Yeah. I mean, so I do think, because I'm also, have a history of, anxiety myself, specifically in the social areas. I think that it has been helpful to me up until now to sort of pat myself on the back when it comes to sort of the baby steps of, this thing that, I just couldn't bring myself to do. I finally did it. So, crack open a beer and celebrate type of thing,
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I definitely, it could be hard. And I think the small wins are definitely, they need to be encouraged. And, just people will improve at different paces. And, you can't expect that, after 2 weeks, you're going to, have a ton of friends and then everything's going to change. It's
right.
My program is more oriented towards building social skills.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And if you are building those social skills, regardless of whether the person you spoke to do that ended up being your friend or not, those skills, if all goes well, will stay with you.
Yeah.
And you can make another friend. Yeah. So, and that's the goal, is to, improve your life going forward.
That's a cool way to approach it, I think. That is really practice and skill development. And you're right. You don't lose the thing you learned just because it may not have panned out exactly as you envisioned in your mind. In fact, isn't learning social skills, whether you learn them when you're, a baby or a toddler, or it takes you longer, or you learn it in a different way, isn't it all about, so much of it is about being open to the unknown outcome of what your social interactions are going to be. I like that. I think that's cool. We're getting close to the end of time, so I just am curious. Does doing this work bring you a sense of satisfaction and joy?
Yeah. As I said before, I'm, just starting out, so I don't have the experience to say about whether the life coaching does, because still looking for my first clients right now. But as far as the caretaking, yeah, immensely. When, you're caretaking for someone and, you could see the improvements in their life, and, just the smile on their face and the satisfaction, like, it's very fulfilling. You know what I mean? And like, my whole reason for wanting to do this, as a life coach, is because I want to continue that feeling of fulfillment, going forward. Just years from until I retire. You know what I mean?
I do. I think that's a great life goal.
Yeah.
One shared by many, but I just was curious, because I think when you have that kind of personal stake in it, and it's something that you found a passion for. I also think that in your line of work, that's part of what will, hopefully lead you to success, because people will want to be around that kind of energy, as opposed to somebody who might be looking at it as, my job is to get you from here to there and then move on. If at least part of it is, but I also want to feel good about the fact that I'm interacting in this way with my clients, and that I think people can feel that and respond to that. Let me just take the last 30 seconds or so we have here today and do another shout out of your information. So we're talking about going to visit Special Friend Coaching, which is specialfriendcoach.com. That's the website. Or emailing Coach Pasquale at Coach Pasquale, PASQUALE @proton.me. And I think it's really great that you're open to hearing directly from people. I would encourage our listeners, if you're interested in talking with Coach Pasquale about what he does, or maybe signing on as one of his first clients, go ahead and email him. Check out the website, because there is some information there. And I know you're offering some intake sessions, which I assume people would sign up for. And if it seems like a match, great. And if it doesn't, no hard feelings, right? You're just looking to
exactly
put yourself out there and meet people. So, so I think that's great. And again, I've said this many, many times as the host of this show, I get the opportunity to meet and talk to interesting people from all over who are doing really cool and creative and unique work in the field. And I think you definitely are in that category.
Thank you.
And so, I think it's really cool. And I think I applaud you for taking your own personal experiences and pursuing your passions. And I really wish you the best of luck in your business.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So again, specialfriendcoach.com and emailing Coach Pasquale at proton.me. Thank you, Coach Pasquale, for talking with us today on 1 in 44.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. This is 1 in 44, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and remember, Anderson cares.
You've been listening to 1 in 44, a weekly presentation of the Anderson Center for Autism. Join us for another edition of the show at this time next weekend.